What if I told you Usher's Heartbreak, Beyoncé's solo breakthrough, and Aaliyah's final masterpiece were all born inside the same hidden room in New York City, a studio buried in Hell's Kitchen whose walls soaked up greatness. And to make things interesting, it was the same microphone that captured Aaliyah's whispers that also recorded Usher's rawest confessions and Beyoncé's very first solo vocals. This is where platinum albums were born, heartbreaks were immortalized, and legends found their sound. Welcome to the Hit Factory, the most iconic studio you've probably never seen. In the 90s, New York City was a jungle of sound. If you were anybody, or trying to be, you booked time at one of the giants. There was Sony Music Studios on West 54th, and it was Tommy Mottola's fortress. It was literally Mariah Carey, Celine Dion, and J-Lo, almost like pop royalty only. Then there was the Electric Lady, which was built by Jimi Hendrix, now home to all rock gods and experimental icons. Then there was the Record Plant, home to Bruce Springsteen, John Lennon, and Aerosmith. It was history on tape. These weren't studios, they were institutions, and walking into them felt like stepping into a corporate boardroom with platinum plaques, and the pressure was relentless. For rising R&B and hip-hop artists, many of them young, black, and still fighting for respect, these places must have been overwhelming. They needed something different, a room where mistakes weren't punished, they were part of the process. That's what was missing until Ed Germano opened a door that changed everything. When Ed brought the original Hit Factory from Jerry Ragovoy in 1975, it was a respected spot. But in 1991, when he moved it to 421 West 54th Street, he transformed it into something legendary. Right in the heart of Hell's Kitchen, Midtown West, minutes from Times Square and Lincoln Center, he built a musical sanctuary. It was a 100,000 square foot facility with 7 studios, 5 mastering rooms, and 5 writing suites. Studio 1 spanned the entire top floor with 4 overdub booths, a full orchestra lounge, a green room, a gym, and even a production office. It was a sonic city inside 4 walls, and the names that came through were legendary. Stevie Wonder recorded songs in the key of life here. Michael Jackson, Madonna, U2, Paul Simon, Barbra Streisand, Eric Clapton, John Lennon, even Dream Theater, where Octavarium would become the last album ever recorded here in 2005. In 1994, 41 Grammy nominations were tied to music made at the Hit Factory, and that was before the new generation even showed up. But the Hit Factory wasn't like other studios. It had a secret. Ed Germano didn't try to outshine Sony or Electric Lady. He just wanted to outfeel them. With his son Troy Germano and help from legendary British acoustic designers like Derek Buckingham and Neil Grant, they didn't just build a studio, they built a sound sanctuary. By 1993, the Hit Factory's new home was open, and unlike anything else in Manhattan, it had 7 recording studios, each one tuned like an instrument, 5 mastering rooms, 5 private writing production suites, some of which became long-term homes for producers like Mark Ronson and Trackmasters. Studio 1 was a cathedral for orchestras. Studio 3 was so intimate, it felt like recording in your own bedroom if your bedroom came with a $300,000 SSL mixing console and world-class isolation. There was no label suits breathing down your neck, just engineers who knew when to talk and when to shut up and hit record. Early on, the Hit Factory hosted legends like Stevie Wonder, Luther Vandross, and Michael Jackson, but it was the late 90s R&B explosion that turned the building into something else entirely. This is where Usher turned heartbreak into history, Beyoncé tuned whispers into Grammys, and Aaliyah became immortal. The Hit Factory walls were humming with talent, and 3 voices in particular left marks so deep that they still echo today. I am talking about Usher, Beyoncé, Aaliyah. These 3 voices walked through the Hit Factory's doors and walked out as icons. Let's start with Usher. In 2000, he was 22 years old and already had a platinum album, My Way, under his belt. But he hadn't peaked, not even close. He came to the Hit Factory to record parts of 8701, including You Got It Bad and Can You Handle It, songs that helped turn him from a teen heartthrob into an R&B powerhouse. But then came Confessions, and everything changed. That album was largely recorded between the Hit Factory and Patchwork in Atlanta. This work of art happened in Studio 2. Legend has it, he'd show up and stay at the mic for hours without a break. He didn't just sing from his heart, he unloaded. It was all of his talent and no auto-tune. Jermaine Dupri once said, "You didn't direct Usher, you just hit record and let it happen." By 2004, Confessions had sold over 15 million copies, making it the best-selling R&B album of the 21st century, and the Hit Factory helped birth it. Then came Beyoncé. Before the billion-dollar tours and the documentary specials, there was a 22-year-old bae working in Studio 4. Imagine being 22, chasing a dream, and standing where Stevie Wonder once stood. This was post-Survivor Destiny's Child, and she was ready to break out on her own. At the Hit Factory, she recorded parts of Dangerously in Love, including Speechless, Be With You, and Dangerously in Love 2. She wasn't chasing a hit, she was carving a legacy. That album would win her 5 Grammys, launching her solo reign, and then there was Aaliyah. In 2001, Aaliyah was deep into recording her 3rd studio album, the self-titled one that marked her creative peak. She came to the Hit Factory after working in Miami and LA. Here, she recorded vocals for Rock the Boat, Try Again, and More Than a Woman. That famous airy tone on Rock the Boat, Studio 5 caught it. And the mic she used is still treated like a relic, not because of the gear, but because of who stood in front of it. Even beyond R&B, the studio's cultural reach extended into pop, rock, and hip-hop. NSYNC and Britney Spears worked there during their rise. Jay-Z and Nas both touched down during peak moments of East Coast rap. The studio became a rotating door of generational influence, not by chasing trends, but by giving artists what they couldn't find elsewhere, freedom wrapped in technical precision. And that wasn't just luck. The Hit Factory's engineers were known for being obsessive about quality. But that's not why the Hit Factory had become huge. What made the Hit Factory legendary wasn't just the equipment or the acoustics, it was the freedom it gave artists to go deeper. Today, artists record hits in bedrooms. Back then, it was the Hit Factory or nothing. By the 2000s, the Hit Factory had become more than a studio. It was where the culture converged. It was where the culture lived. Rodney Darkchild Jergens was part of the wave of producers whose futuristic sound matched the Hit Factory's forward-thinking spirit. Where Timbaland turned drum kits into alien heartbeats, where the Neptunes blurred the lines between R&B and space-age funk. It was more than recording, it was a place where eras collided. You might find Alicia Keys writing in one suite, Missy Elliott dancing to a rough mix in another, and a young John Legend quietly rehearsing by the vending machine. Everyone crossed paths here. There were rumors of Beyoncé and Jay-Z's first proper hangout being somewhere near Studio 2. Engineers say the hallway conversations were sometimes more legendary than the sessions themselves. But the real magic was in the process. The engineers were trained to disappear, to make the artists feel like they were alone with the music. No flashing buttons, no over-explaining gear. Just a perfectly tuned room, a high-end mic, and the trust to let emotions spill, one technician said. These weren't just recordings, these were time capsules, and the Hit Factory wasn't just pressing records, it was pressing moments into history. But every era has its final chorus, and for the Hit Factory, that came in 2005. After more than a decade of shaping the sound of R&B, hip-hop, and pop, the legendary 421 West 54th Street location quietly closed its doors. The industry had changed. Big-budget sessions gave way to laptops and bedroom studios. Artists didn't need 6 rooms and a grand piano anymore. They just needed a mic, a MacBook, and maybe some auto-tune. Suddenly, the place that once hosted platinum dreams was too expensive to keep alive. The building was sold, the consoles were auctioned. And the music? Well, that had already escaped into the world. Some called it the end of New York's true studio culture, but others knew that the work had already been done because the Hit Factory wasn't just soundproof walls, it was a vault for dreams, it was a moment in time. A sacred space where creativity came unfiltered and history got pressed to tape. These weren't just recordings, they were time capsules. Every note, every beat, every whispered lyric, frozen in tape, but alive in memory. And remember when I said Usher, Beyoncé, and Aaliyah all recorded here? Well, in our next video, we're going even deeper into the studio that built Nas Illmatic, the place where raw New York poetry turned into a classic. While you're waiting, don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell because this is just the beginning.